Thank you very much for coming and giving up lunchtime. It's this session really is going to be a bit of a circuitous tour through innovation and what drives people who innovate in the industry to create the products and spectacles that they do, and whether it's led engineers lead the art that we see, or whether it's actually the artists who get the engineers to fix their problems. And so very much open to questions from the audience. You know, we've got some very notable people in the audience, and on the panel as well as in the audience actually. So the first thing I want to do is just to lead on where this session came about. There was a discussion with the PLASA team about looking at doing a session with previous Gottelier Award winners. Now, Tony Gottelier was a known innovator, industry commentator, and was very much in the disco and club scene back in the 70s and 80s, and he was quite a leading player in the British Association of Disco Equipment Manufacturers, I think it was, which was the forerunner to PLASA. He was also associate editor of LSI magazine for many years, and I had the fortunate job of working for him back in the day. And when he passed away, the Gottelier Award was named after his honour to recognise those in the industry who have innovated and paved the way for what we have today. And on that note, the winner of last night's award was not available to collect it. So I'd love to welcome Peter to the stage quickly to introduce our latest Gottelier Award winner, Elias from Unusual Rigging.
Yes, I get the pleasure of announcing winners at the award ceremony every year. And frankly, I was stood up last night by this year's Gottelier Award winner. He wasn't there, but he is here today, and we're just going to have a quick moment where we'll take his picture receiving his well-deserved honour and award. But I think you were missed last night, Robin. There was a rapturous applause, and I'm sure these people here will just show us how much you're appreciated by giving him a rapturous round of applause for winning the Gottelier Award for 2024.
Green ones, they seem to have. Super. So I'll just get my bins on. It's a little bit scripted on my part, so I just need to check where I was around. So in terms of the Tony Gottelier and his work, he was in partnership with Pete and Willson, and another very creative lighting inventor, and between them they're a bit of an innovation powerhouse. And the only reason I'm up here today really is because when Tony retired from the business a little bit, he handed over the role of the chair of the Innovation Awards to me when I was working on the writing for the magazine as well. So I don't have any claim to be here in this innovation seminar with luminaries of the luminaire rigging and control. I'm really here just to facilitate the discussion. So I'll introduce the panel as we go. We have JB Toby, who is well known for his work with Avolites, developing controlled dimming systems. And in terms of the challenges for you, one of your early ones was lighting a priceless work of art. And how did you overcome that? And here you can see Neapolitan sculpture with 140 priceless figures in a New York setting.
The interesting link in that is that one of our shareholders runs a company that is museum lighting. He got requested to light these figurines. They're priceless, they're irreplaceable. and prominent in New York. And we had 10 weeks. And as he walked away with explaining what he wanted, he says, make it good, make it fast, but please don't burn the angels. So what we created was 35 units of 24 channels LED fixture that emanated no UV light, no heat, and they were all underneath this sort of floor where the tree is on. And we were only allowed 20 degrees C temperature rise underneath the tree with a couple of kilowatts of LED fixtures, no fans. So yeah, that was quite a painful project in that respect.
But you made it work.
We made it work. We made it work in 10 weeks. We were on time for a change.
Did you tell your insurer, by the way?
The bigger question was not all the shareholders were aware what actually meant. So yeah, halfway down the project was, by the way, this is what this means. If it goes wrong, this is what happens. There were a few raised eyebrows. Nothing happened. I think it's been used for about 10 years now, and they're still working. So
all doing well.
Thing, yeah.
Right. Next on my list, I'd like to introduce Robin and Elias. And Robin is as we've just seen, is well known for his exploits in rigging, and he's suspended everything from people to planes. Although it was noted in his notes from the speech last night that he chatted to Nicky saying the only thing he didn't rig was the Gottelier vote. So it is a genuine win on Robin's part. Now, your wackiest job, you said, was to fly 32 aerial artists on the London Eye. Now, I don't have the original photo, so this is nicked off the internet. But that must have been quite a challenge for you to do.
Yeah, the challenge was to invent a system which would allow the artists to perform on 32 riverside spokes, hands-free, to go downhill at a controlled speed, this way in the southern sector, and that way in the northern hemisphere, or put the brakes on when they wanted to. So using component parts and various different bits of technology, I put together a system which allowed us to do that. The other parameter was that access to the London Eye, which is going around at speed all the time, was that I had to stand on top of a 3-metre tall bit of ladder beam, and one by one the artists came through the axle of the wheel up here, and I had 7 seconds to clip them on, adjust their system, give them a kiss and wave goodbye as they went in a clockwise direction. And then they performed for 3 revolutions successfully, thank God. And similarly, when they got to 11 o'clock on the final revolution, they put it in downward mode and arrived at me to give me 7 seconds to get them off before they went through the crush point and disappear back down through the axle and down the stairs. So quite a lot of relief when that came to an end.
God, I'm not surprised. So what was the actual event?
They were the cultural events leading up to the 2012 Olympics, which was 7 aerial displays of aerial artists in London in one day, just before the opening of the Games.
Ah, okay.
This was the last one. Challenges.
And next, I'd love to introduce Howard, who is well known for doyen of all things theatre and practicals. His paw prints are on most stages and effects in the West End, and activities range from designing and building the car for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang to automation of cannons for Nelson's Victory Experience and sequence pyrotechnics, coup de theatre and animated fibre displays. Now, one of your best creations was a Candela thing for Felix to pass. I don't know how to describe it. You said it was hard to describe, so perhaps you could give it a go. And there's a picture.
Yeah, some artists arrived and said they wanted to make something.
Yeah, there's another one there.
They were an odd bunch. But one of them had an idea, and because they were working for the Panerai Watch Company, they zeroed in on the fluorescent stuff they put in the watch dials, so you can read them at night. So they've got a big pot of that, and decided they could make something with it. So they drew up, well, various things, but we came up with this big disc, which the size it is so it will fit in the lift at the V&A, that set the design criteria. And then there's a column in the front with a large number of UV LEDs in it, which turned on and off using, might have been one of your desks, I can't remember actually. And we said, well, we could program this and do patterns, and they went away quite interested, and we ended up with that job. But it was rather lovely actually, and it generated all sorts of different patterns through relatively simple technology we had laying around, our LED drivers that we make ourselves, a DMX desk that someone could program, put some effects on it and generate the patterns. So we sort of pulled together a load of bits that you sort of find lying around as you do, and came up with something like that. I don't know if it's quite what they had in mind when they arrived, but they were rather pleased with it. And it was quite, I enjoyed that one. It was good.
Is it still installed?
It's in. I think it finally went to Milan to an exhibition, and I think it's at the watch company's, which I think is in Milan. I'm not sure if it's still there.
So it still works.
Well, I don't know if the UV stuff's faded, because it has on my watch by now. So I don't know if it's. But
it does look very pretty.
It's the video's quite something.
Yeah. And then last but not absolutely by no means least, I'm really delighted to welcome Willson, Tony Gottelier's partner, who's the only only person here not to be a Gottelier award winner. But seeing as he used to do the creations that Tony and he worked with, I think that's a fair aspect. And I've managed to coax you out of your Oxfordshire workshop to come and have a bit of a chat. Now, the one thing when I asked about what is your weirdest thing, he mentioned the Daleks and the colour beat frequency oscillator, and I hunted around online to try and find a picture of a Dalek, and even in my old work photos at home, and I found something else which we'll come on to in a sec, but I couldn't find any pictures of Daleks. So tell us about Daleks.
I was wanting to create a colour system for little projectors that we were using with the band. This was Pink Floyd early days. And I was experimenting with two colour wheels in the same optical path. And motor control was very rudimentary at that time. And they got out of control and were going at high speed, like 2,000 or 3,000 revs. And all of a sudden, there were very delightful visual images coming out of it that weren't there, sort of hexagon patterns and sort of fairly trippy in a way. And so I shot off to the BBC studios, because the band were doing a Top of the Pops at the time, and Sid and I were crouched under the shelf in the dressing room, getting very spaced out on this. Now, I made some for the band for gigs, which we used, which were like film lights, small film lights. But then thought, I'm sorry, is this going on too long? That I would make a personal-sized one. And this was the key, that you would look into this little tunnel and adjust the speed to suit your own rhythms of whatever. Now, I'd gone to Turin with Jack Henry Moore, the guy who founded the Travis Theatre in Edinburgh. We were scoping out venues. We went to a club, and I was showing this device to a young Italian woman. And she got right into it and was touching the dials very carefully. And always my fear had been using stroboscopes, that I didn't really like the effect they had on people's psyche, really. They would get a bit carried away with it. And this colour thing seemed to be okay. However, this particular woman started to jerk, and I thought, oh God, this is it. This is an epileptic fit in the making. And so I tried to pull the machine away from her, but she grasped onto it very tightly. Now, I had no Italian, she had no English, and finally she sat back, and we didn't know how to communicate this. I was worried that she had some epileptic history or something like that. And she was trying to explain what had happened, and finally, in desperation, and this is where those with sensitive ears need to avert them, she finally took my hand and thrust it under her skirt, and the humidity told the story was that it was an orgasm she'd had, not an epileptic fit. So that was a good result, I thought. Oh, and, however, subsequently, the device was stolen from the car that we'd been using that evening. So I only hope it found its way to her. That was it.
Did you scale that up and use it on their shows?
Well, yes. I mean, I'd made scaled versions for the band, but I mean, at that time we were going out at 250 a night. You know.
Yeah.
250 pounds, that is, not thousand. You know, and so it was fairly modest. And then I made big ones for Division Bell tour, like 16,000
Yes,
watts.
And I found on the TARDIS wiki the following. It said, in the very early days, it had special lighting effects that would sometimes explode and shoot glass across the stage.
Yes.
And they called them the Daleks due to their lack of compassion for human life.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, the glass discs I was using for the early ones were not toughened, and so they would explode sometimes. Yeah. That was true.
Now, just quickly before we move on, I did find some photos in the loft, and Pete, I don't know if you recognise that, where you're there in your flying suit.
This looks like Red Bull.
It is.
In Wiener Neustadt.
And so Pete sat in the helicopter with an Avo Pearl strapped to his lap, and operated this searchlight, which was a Razorhead, which was done for U2. So it's a moving mirror on top of a 7 kilowatt searchlight, and a generator slung underneath that along with the ballast. And quite what were you shining the light at?
Well, pretty randomly, I have to say, because I was never a good student of the Avo boards, and at one point it flashed under the helicopter itself, which has glass panels, and the guy said, well, you see this little lever? Next time it does that, I pull the lever and the whole thing is jettisoned, because he wasn't prepared to have light coming up into his eyes. But it was a good show.
And it stayed clipped onto the helicopter.
It stayed clipped onto the helicopter. And he'd even made me remove the little latching for the XLR connectors and stuff, so that it would be a free fall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in advance.
So, but this brings me neatly on now to looking at that question about the art and the engineering. So what we've illustrated is that much of the what we see and what we enjoy is actually created, in my mind, by engineers. And the question I have for you is, do you consider your work to be artistic as engineers? Are you artists?
Absolutely.
I think so.
Well, yes, in some ways. I mean, there's a lot goes into these things, as Peter's rather aptly demonstrated. People want to come to you with an idea, maybe it's an idea you had on your own, and you just try and think, oh, this will be a bit of fun, I might make one. But often you're working from what people come to you and say, I would like something like this, I want this. And the trick with you working with people like that is usually trying to figure out what they want, not what they ask for, and they're usually quite different. So interpreting ideas is a mixture of art and engineering, exactly as you've described. It can be raw science, if you like, to come up with something, but most of that is coloured by the effect it will have in the environment it's going to be used in, which my business is the theatre, and how it works in that environment is all important. There's no good making something that's relevant elsewhere if that's not what people want. I mean, in theatre, people want something that's going to help tell a story and create an environment, and that's the important part of theatre, is always, it's about storytelling, and everything you do has to be part of it, enhance the storytelling, and you can't lose sight of that in engineering or random art. It's a mixture of both.
JB, what about you? Because you're more ensconced in the electronics and hardware and software and...
Yeah. So I think in the hardware there's probably less of artistry going on. There's more skill and there's craftsmanship as a iterating to the point where you need to be. Either in metalwork or electronic circuitry. In electronic circuitry, I think there can be artistry. Some circuits that we create or other people create, and we create that we really go like, that's artistry. But even in software, you can have that. The famous inverse square software from Dune, the game, wherein that's artistry, where somebody with a few lines of code creates something really complicated. And we have a similar thing with our products. There's bits in there really go like, wow, that's super cool. Somebody's really nailed that. In the functionality of the console, I think there is artistry there. There's at least a real understanding of what the artist wants, and then converting that into a functionality of the console.
Yeah.
I think Synergy was a good example where nobody had asked for it. Everybody was doing it, synchronization of video and lighting, but nobody had asked for a unified control of that. And we at some point sat there and went, we ought to do this. And then
that's paved the way, hasn't it? So again, it's the sort of the engineers leading that sort of creative feature set that people can use to
yeah, it's really understanding what people want. Like Howard said, don't listen to what they say. Often people go in the how instead of the what. And initially you need to figure out the what. What is it that they want to achieve ultimately? And then you then start figuring out how you're going to do that. And that generally means you need to really understand what they're doing. So you need to have some artistry in their field to understand what they want about. Because if you don't understand them, how you can translate what they want.
Yeah. Robin, what about rigging? Because it's all seen often as just bits of wire and truss. And do you think it's artistic?
So I think rigging is an art form.
Sorry, talk to them.
So rigging, in my opinion, is an art form. We get presented with a requirement which you have to understand, whether it's hanging up an aircraft, either as an aircraft in a museum or as painted as a work of art. And then you use engineering as one of your resources, along with rigging accessories correctly rated and riggers with expertise and access equipment to put a package together, which means that you can display the artwork or whatever it is. And the rigging should always be not wires and things like that, but invisible or very discreet at the least.
Yeah. So by all means, do ask questions. We've got a roving mic as well, so please do chip in if you have any questions. So another question is, how much of your work is turning inspiration into products versus responding to those creative needs? So how much, Pete, I know you dream up designs and things and turn them into products and then go and show them to the creatives and say, what do you think?
That's how it works often, yes.
Yeah.
That I'll have a concept which has either come from maybe a sort of semi-trance state or maybe a dream or maybe an actual fact, and think that would be suitable for Willie Williams or whoever it might be. In the case of the U2, the double mirror razor head thing, I designed it early on. Oh, in fact, Bruno was the first one I showed it to, Bruno Dodoro of Coamar. And he instantly got it and wanted to make it, and he did a very good engineering job of it.
And it was licensed as the Coamar Nat, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the periscopic head on the end.
In fact, I have, as you.
Here's an old light fixture I made earlier.
So this was the very cute little device that he made with 360 degree coverage. I thought it was cool. So I would say that was where art meets engineering, if you like.
Yeah.
My engineering at home is very much function over form, but a live light show you could deem artistic.
Yeah,
you know.
But that again, that's got patents, hasn't it? Because the mechanism, so you can rotate one without the other, the
Yes.
panel, the tilt moving at the same time.
And I successfully patented that.
Yeah.
And I had 2 patents on it. And a couple of years later, Strand Century sent me a letter saying, we've just got a patent on this from the US office, and we'd like to offer you a license. And And I checked their patent. It had the proper stamp and everything. And seems to be the way the USA operates somehow. You pay the money and then you do the fighting afterwards.
Yeah.
And they'd actually detailed the drive system, which they said was unique. And by a strange coincidence, I had the catalogue that they'd lifted this drive system from years ago doing the eyes for Rainbow, whatever. And so I told them this in no uncertain terms, and they sent a reply saying, in the circumstances, we withdraw our offer of a license, which I thought was quite bold.
But that's I remember the American patent system. It was one thing Tony used to write about often in the magazine. Was in America you'd almost patent anything, and then, like you say, you could patent the wheel if no one had already done it. And there was big arguments about.
Yeah, catalogues. Oh, I didn't know one of those existed. That's interesting. You park it in the back of your mind, walking around an exhibition, not necessarily this one, but looking for stuff that you don't know about. People will say, what are you looking for when you go to an exhibition? And I always say, well, I don't know. It's the stuff I don't know about's what I'm looking for, because I'd like to find out. So, yes, it's everything's input. What you read, what you see, who you talk to, you take all that in, and the stuff you might use. To make what we end up making for the theatre, which rarely becomes product, because mostly we make one-offs, or as I often answer when people say, what do you make? I say bespoke landfill, because mostly that's where it ends up, and that's the end of it. So theatre doesn't lead to product very much, I'm afraid, or I'm not very good at it, that's for certain. But you said about stuff being done before. It has all been done before. Not quite, but a hell of a lot of it has been done before. The ideas that you might bring together and use a mixture of ideas, but a lot of them have been done before. I was thinking about something in rigging. There was, I read a book about production of Peter Pan at the Opera House in 18-something. Flying would have been by Kirby's, manually. And Peter Pan and Wendy held hands, lifted off the stage, flew to the back of the auditorium holding hands, and when they got there they turned round and flew back again. Now if you tried to say we'll do that now, I'm sure someone would come up with a way of doing it.
I think we do that now, but you're right.
You know, people were doing this 100 years ago, so always look at what's been done before, because it can be quite an eye-opener really.
Is there anything you can think of now that would be considered impossible that might change in the future? That's a bit of a random thing. I was thought about it the other day, but in the past we thought, oh, you can't do that. We haven't got the kit doesn't exist or the equipment doesn't exist. Whereas now it is readily available. I remember just quickly. Go on, Pete. Sorry, big one.
No, I remember when I was first working in the theatre. Being frustrated by the way iris diaphragms will jam up, because they're all the blades are fighting for one position and they get stuck. And I sort of filed this complaint in the back of my mind, and it was like about 30 years later that I sussed how to do a rigid blade iris, because I could use dichroic silver glass, and then realized, of course, I can make iris diaphragm colour changes from that as well. So that was waiting for the tech, yes.
Oh, that was used in the Razorhead, wasn't it, to colour the beam on the searchlights?
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah, the cassettes that would slot in.
And later the chromoscope with full colour mixing.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to lead me somewhere. Is there any questions from the audience, by the way? Anyone like to ask anything? My next question really is, looking at where we go to the future. So we've seen an exponential rise in technology and innovation and the industry generally, particularly in the events industry. Where do you think we're going to go?
Well, certainly things get a lot smaller, don't they? I mean, if you think about batteries and radio mics and microphones and lights, although they sometimes get bigger, but the technology does allow you to build much smaller stuff, which opens up avenues of what can be done. And I think that continued development, that along with software control, which I'm sure someone will come up with some AI, but quite what will come out of it, I don't know. But the tools that become available are change constantly. I mean, but although the physics remains the same, you still got to understand what it is you're trying to do. But getting stuff smaller, just look at electric motors, winches, all sorts of things, and that opens up all sorts of possibilities that you couldn't have done before just because stuff was too big, too heavy. Talk about flying those people. If you had a miniature winch that you could put somewhere, well, maybe we could do something. The development of things like that will certainly continue to happen.
Do you think, touching on your point about AI, do you think AI is going to influence our business at all?
Absolutely.
In what way?
Well, I'm sure none of us like anything that's artificial, but it definitely will have an effect and none of us like anything that's artificial. It will definitely have an effect on how we have to solve problems, but bring it on.
So more of a problem-solving tool than a sort of an application for.
Well, it's developing fast. It will cost us a lot of money. It'll be able to beat us at chess soon. It's just like having a child, isn't it? And that's not a problem.
Can you see an application in control and?
I want to say something about the previous question, where things are going. I think the networking becomes easier, so smaller microcontrollers can be. Part of it, because the end devices, the fixtures, the hoist, the audio, it's all ending up. The interconnection between those systems is becoming easier, whereas in the past they were completely different worlds that had no means of connecting with each other. There's still ways to go, and if you then add AI to that, well, there you go. You know, it can do things on your network. That it can create creative things. It can. It's not going to replace people. I think the whole fear of you're going to lose your job because of AI, that's not what it's going to do. It's going to augment us. Not in the Elon Musk negative way, but the sort of, it will make mundane tasks a lot quicker. Audio, it will improve the audio with technology, noise reduction.
Do you think, Robin, is there much in the way of innovation on the horizon for rigging, new technologies and things?
Yes, but I think that it's the key for rigging is to have a good team of solution providers to address any problem that comes along. So as technology progresses and the problems that you have to solve change, you're well placed to solve the problems. I don't think there's anything, or the definition of things that are impossible are things which we haven't figured out how to solve yet. I'm sure you guys will all agree with that.
Very much. I mean, a time machine would be handy because in all these years it still takes as long as it ever did to put on a show. To get from the day you start putting the scenery or whatever it is, be it a virtual scenery, any whatever, in a place, a real place, a virtual place, I don't know, and then get in people, virtual people, and rehearse them into doing something, and speaking, performing, playing music, whatever, takes a period of time. And it doesn't seem to take any less time the longer you do it or the longer it goes on. Because at the end of it, you're still trying to produce something that people want to come and see, be it an exciting event or whatever, or a play where you're telling a story, or a band showing off their music and entertaining people, because what we all do is about entertaining people. And the technology is wrapped around that. It's not the core of it. It's how we interface with people is what makes our industry any good at all, and or have any point. Otherwise, it's just stuff, but which is a bit dull.
AI is not making any impact on my work at all. I mean, if
you got a phone?
if you go to my lighting effects bench, you'll see a bath of mercury and some compressor stuff. And if you go to my mechanical bench, you'll see the start of the 10 million lumen film light.
Yes, because you gave up on the 250 kilowatt argon water-cooled thing for availability issues, and has now embarked on a monster LED thing. And your first iteration melted the cooling system.
It did, yes. Yeah.
It's that, you know, what I love about that is that sort of empirical, it's almost like that wartime spirit of innovation. It's like, what happens if I do this? And I'm sure this will work. And you just try it and see what happens. So it's not, that level of creativity is not like going to a company where you say, well, okay, what's the business plan? What's the budget going to be? You know, what's the timescales to production? What are the sales figures likely to be like? None of that. You just create and go.
If you're not prepared to fail, you can't innovate. You have to be full-heartedly be able to fail and go, well, this is probably going to go wrong, and then at some point it doesn't, and then you've innovated.
No,
that's basically what it is.
But in terms of, you know, there's that old adage, you know, innovation is 1% sort of inspiration and 99% perspiration. And do you, as a
I disagree.
Oh, okay.
Go on.
Well, apart from Pete, but do you think that? What's your kind of success to failure ratio? Well, there's a bit of an odd question, really, because we never fail because the show always goes on. But have you sort of tried to create anything and it's gone a bit Pete Tong and?
I had one failure. I'll share if you like.
Yeah, do you?
Some 50 years ago, first rock and roll tour. Front truss, 2 ground support towers. The ground support towers are old things called the MEPs, and they had masts which were 100mm by 100mm, which as a rigger, or learning to be a rigger, you were tasked with climbing up to focus the lights. So one afternoon I was a bit bored, and I took some pieces off these 4 lifts that we had, some metal straps, some motorcycle grip things, which were the handles, and I built this thing which you put round the mast and you put your foot in it and you could use it as a device for climbing effortlessly. So everyone came back from catering and there I was ready to demonstrate my first invention. And I said, look at this, guys. And I put it on and I climbed up the mast in an effortless fashion, stepped onto the truss, went like this, and they all applauded. And my device rocketed down the mast and hit the locking handle on the winch, which went like that. And my end of the truss fell 15 feet, leaving me on top of the mast like a koala. So since then I always put safety as a factor into the inventions.
That's very good. So in terms of creativity as well, do you ever sort of, well, you must end up with blocks where you just think, you know, you're stalling on something and cannot progress. How do you get around it? Do you have any techniques? You go and read a book, go for a walk?
Yeah, I go and work on something else. So I have 3 projects running at any time, so I can flip from one to another when I get stalled or bored or whatever.
Yeah. Do you have any
Yeah, I'm very non-linear. Actually, I'm all over the place all the time, and then eventually things come out of it.
Are you similar? Is this a trait amongst
But
innovators?
if you have the luxury of a team of experts to brainstorm with, that's really useful. But basically, you're working to a deadline, so you don't really have time for creative blocks as such, I wouldn't think. You get over it.
Yeah, find a way around it, whatever it is.
There
Yeah.
comes aspiration.
It's what you do.
Just quickly, I'm noting the time actually. Does anyone have any questions? No? If you had not an unlimited budget, but a reasonable budget and crew behind you to develop new products, where would you direct that budget on? What would you direct it on? What would you try and create? New, innovative things for the industry?
I would get a whole suite of new machine tools.
Well, it doesn't enable you to create more efficiently, quicker, bring things to...
I think there's a shortage of people and skills, and I think any spare money. We need more people who can think and make things, and there's not enough of it. So whatever would go towards helping create a stream of people who could do stuff like that. We need more people like my colleagues here, and that's where we need to direct resources as an industry and as a country and as a world.
Well, I've often said we're an engineering industry, and this is what I always title the sexy face of engineering, because we're so used to people in hard hats or fixing machines and things like that. But as an engineering profession, I think it's much more exciting working in events with.
I think the problem with education at the moment is sort of what we're talking about, is that they learn the basics, but they don't learn how do you make a product out of this. How do you fail? You know, although they get taught like fail early and all that, but they haven't really been taught to be not fearful of an idea.
Yeah.
If the idea sticks with you, if it keeps following you, follow it.
Yeah.
Let it lead you to wherever it needs to lead you. And if that's failure, well, then you've learned something. And then suddenly there is something there that is a real product or a real feature or a real solution to a problem that you're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And I find that the young people that enter our establishment miss that fear, that freedom to face something that is probably going to go wrong.
Yeah.
And you just need to go for it.
Muck in and get done.
Yeah, get stuck in.
Well, listen, we're coming up to the end of time, so unless there's anything else on the panel.
You wanted to talk about a polarizing effect, I think.
Yes, I forgot about that. Right, so I can't remember. I think it was Nick Mason's book, and I didn't realise this, but your early exploits with Pink Floyd, creating your lighting effects, was by using condoms strapped over projectors. Is that right?
Not strapped over, just stretching them between
Within the
polarizers, so that you get the stress patterns, which are very.
So did you go to the barbers and they say anything for the weekend, and you'll say, I'll take the top shelf?
Sort of like that. There was a chemist down at the bottom corner of Tottenham Court Road I used to go to.
Really?
And I would pester him for, I know I want a stronger one. And so he would say, oh yes, well you try these. And ultimately he said, I think I've got just the thing for you. And he went into the back room and he came out with, half-wave plates and so on, which give you nice static effects. But I wanted a dynamic thing to use, and I would hand stretch it, and move it during the gig, that's what we did.
Well, it will be automated now, wouldn't it?
It would be, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've yet to see an automated version of that, but it would be cool.
James, I've got one thing I didn't say, I told him earlier. There's an interesting link between the three of us. In '93, I worked for a rental house in Holland, let's set up Phantom of the Opera, and in comes Howard Eaton with his fixtures and products. And it was just on the point for me to where I was stopping touring and really thinking about technology,
Getting a proper job.
Not wanting to push fly cases anymore. And then I met this man who I thought was completely crazy and absolutely amazing. Had all these great ideas and products, and I just went for it. And I thought, well, that's interesting. There's clearly a career path there, and sort of started running my own furrow, but went in that direction. A few years later, I end up at Avolites. I meet another character, David Burrell, who then introduces me to Peter, and we were all on the Razorhead project, which, it's quite interesting how, at that point what happened to me is that I really went from just being an engineer following what other people said to do. I really went, I'm going to grab these products from Avolites, I'm going to make them my own. These two people have sort of created two big sort of bumps in my career, and it's cool to sit on here now and on a panel with these two characters next to me.
I would concur with that because I learned so much from Pete and Tony, and always be very grateful for the opportunities it afforded me and the experience I got.
It was our
working for you
pleasure,
both.
James.
That's very kind of you. And I'll just share one final anecdote quickly. I know I've got to stop. I was driving back from a meeting with Tony once, and we were talking in the car about the future of tech. So this was, in the 90s. And he was saying, oh, James, 30 years' time, everyone will be sitting at home watching concerts on VR headsets. And I disagreed with him because I said people will still want to go there, still want to be in that jostle. They'll be wanting to go to the front of the stage and experience that atmosphere. And I think that was probably one area where Tony was a little bit wide of the mark, and I was actually possibly right for a change. But so it was. It's interesting how just examples how Tony's view was very much forward-facing, looking down the future. But gentlemen, JB, Peter, Howard, Robin, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for coming and joining this. So please do give them all a good round of applause.